Thank you for watching Rider Nation Station's presentation of Third and Long, brought to you by these following fine sponsors: Buffalo Wild Wings, Miller's Funeral Home, Eagles Lodge 767, Rabel's Auto Service, Plus One Professionals, All Glaze Equipment Rental, Midway Trailers, American Legion Post 323, Albert Sporting Goods, Family Audiology, Speckman Automotive, Kogi Plumbing and Heating, Spees Chiropractic, Varsity Lanes, Minster Bank, VFW Post 9289, and Gwinneri Pizzeria.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Third and Long on Rider Nation Station. I'm your host, Joe Hurlburt, joined on the far end of the table by my co-host, Zach Ferrall, and joined as far as our coaches are concerned this week is Roger Duncan, Greg Freewalt, and Danny Long. And, of course, this week we're going to talk about this week's opponent, the OG Titans, and we're going to bring back some memories and what the coaches remember of taking on the OG Titans back in yesteryear, if you will. So, Zach, anything that you want to open up the questions for the panel?
Yeah, I just thought that I've always the coaches have always referred to OG as sort of a basketball school or a MAC school with a lot of basketball talent, and that comes over as highly athletic on the football field. And I'm just curious, has that always been the case? That's been the case for the last 20, 25 years that I've paid attention to them. But has that always been the case, that they were sort of the smaller school that always out athleticked the rest of the league?
I think that's a thought that some people have, but if you look at the records, they have always played us quite well. And have always had tremendous talent, both in basketball and in football. We can think of a lot of games, and one of the games we were talking about a little before was the game that went back and forth when they had B.J. Dickey, who went to Michigan, Al Lobenthal that went to UD, and they went up and down our field. I don't know how many yards they had. It was a tremendous score at the quarter and at halftime all the way through the game. And luckily, I think we won the game because we had the ball last. And we had a tremendous offensive team, and obviously they did. And so, and along with that, I think they have, in most years, really successfully defended us. And their coach, who's been there probably 20-some, I think he's been there 20-some years, has a good idea of how to defend us. And so he gets a lot of mileage out of a lot of athletics on their team, and just good kids that are hard workers, I think. And so they're scary all the time, I think.
Well, I go along with Coach Duncan said there that they've always been competitive against us. I know their basketball's been outstanding, but their football's been very good too. So the memorable stories I remember, one was sometimes, the players know more than the coaches. And this story goes back to when we had the reserve teams on Monday after, the team that we played on Friday night while we play against their reserves on Monday. And so we're playing OG on Monday night, and we would take turns coaching the reserves. Coach Duncan and I had an offensive and defensive player, and Coach Long and Coach Foster would take it the opposite weeks then. And so we're playing the reserves, and the worst thing about it, we never, ever practiced a reserve practice. We just took the players that didn't play on Friday night or got in at the end of the game, didn't play much, except for Coach Purdy would always want to keep one or two of his players that didn't really play. He'd always say, well, maybe I'm going to use them this week. I better keep them here. So you go with the reserve squad, and you'd have half a squad trying to put people together. Sometimes you wouldn't have a linebacker. You'd have to find somebody to fill in. And so you get to the game, and then you got to line up a kickoff team and a return team and get things organized. So as the game's going on, we didn't have a quarterback. I think we had one that he played two positions. He might have been a defensive back, but he also knew the plays, but not a real quarterback. And he couldn't throw the ball any further than the line of scrimmage. So we're in a game, and it's a low-scoring game against OG's reserves, and it's like they score, and get the extra points. We score, but we don't get the extra points. And it's late in the game, like 20 seconds to go, and Coach Duncan's been hammering the ball down the field. We can get 3 and 4 yards of crack, but we got 20 seconds to go in the game. We're on the 20-yard line. We don't have a breakaway threat or anything, and these kids are in my ear. And I'm going, what? And they said, Coach, let's kick a field goal. I said, what? A field goal? We don't even kick him on the varsity squad. We've never practiced or anything. Well, yeah, but Alex can kick. He kicked his in midget football. And I thought, oh my God. And Dunk looks at me and he says, Coach, what do you want? We got 20 seconds left. We got a timeout. What do you want to do? I said, kick a field goal. He goes, what? What are you talking about? Kick a field goal? I said, yeah, I like to kick a field goal. And so the kids had it lined up. They had the holder, they had the snapper. Alex is going to kick the ball, and we line up, and they jump off side. So we get a 5-yard penalty. So that makes us a little closer.
The quarterback could intimidate him with,
yeah.
I think he was 5.
So we're on like the 15, and it's like 15 seconds in the game. Alex kicks the ball, and it goes through the uprights, and you would have thought we won the Super Bowl. And it just goes bizarre. So we get back that evening, and after the reserves get dressed and get out of there, where the varsity coaches come in, and we go through the films for the next week's game we're going to break down. And Skip says, well, how'd your game go? And I says, we won. It was really tight. We won by a point or two. He says, well, anything you say? He says, yeah, we kicked the field goal. He goes, what? So that was one of the great stories.
Yeah, my impression of OG is like the other coaches here. They had some really, really good athletes, and I'll add Burguy to that list. He was about as good an athlete as I've ever seen in any sport he tried. In track, he won all the sprints. He was, I think he won the state in the pole vault. He's a long jumper. And I remember one time he was running a 100-meter dash. Only it was 100 yards then, I think. And he finished the race first and kept right on running. And we didn't know what he was doing. Well, they were calling his name for the long jump. So without breaking stride, he just made a 180-degree turn, went down, hit the board, and of course won the long jump. The problem was they just didn't have enough athletes. And I think it's still a problem, of course. And that hurt back then too, because a lot of teams are going to 2-platoon. That's stopped now, but if you 2-platoon and they only have half as many players as you do, I don't care how good they are, not only do you have holes that you can't fill, but they wear down. And so that's my impression of them. And yeah, I think right now they're doing it with coaching because I don't think they have any great numbers of football players, and they still have good athletes. That's true too.
You know, I told Coach Duncan this as we were chatting prior to the airtime. I said, I tell this story all the time when we reference OG. I never will forget that back in the day, if you were 200 pounds, you were huge. You were huge. And I'll never forget Coach Duncan say, when OG comes out on the field, the earth is going to tilt. Because they had like 3 players, the Laubenthal brothers were like 245, 250. They may have pushed 260, but they were huge at that point in time. Do you remember those guys?
Yeah, I remember them. I remember they had a kid named Alt that was a defensive end that scared the heck out of us. And in fact, we had some people that really kind of didn't want to play. Yeah. and so I had to go to one of the players that was kind of a down the line, you know, you're up next, and say, hey, you're up next. Congratulations, you got the biggest, yeah, you know, sometimes you don't want to go looking for the monster, but sometimes he lines up right in your face. And I said, that's where he's going to be. I said, don't jump offside, go as fast as you can, and don't worry about getting yelled at. And he survived. I remember, this is going back, Wayne Smith was the first OG coach that I remember. And Wayne Smith also was a coach that helped us start our wrestling program. We would take a few kids up there, and he would have their wrestling team show us some moves and stuff like that. And so just a really a great guy. Well, I remember one game it rained up there, and we were in the rain for 2.5 hours. A couple guys sitting here next to me were in the press box, so they had no idea. And I remember looking at Coach Bachman and Coach Pretty, and we were freezing to death. I mean, I was never so cold in my life, and I thought it must have snowed and frost. I had all these things because I was just frozen. And I looked after the game, and people had taken off their shoes and socks, and they were waiting across the track. And I thought, you guys are nuts. You're gonna have ice. And then I realized they hadn't been out in the rain for 2.5 hours. And so when we shook hands after the game, Coach Smith laughed at us, and he said, "I'll take care of you." And he sent over nice, brand new, dry Ottawa Titan sweats for all of us and a thermos of black coffee. And I've loved the man ever since.
With Alt, that reminds me of a story, of course. We went up there one time, and long bus drive, but as we're getting on the bus, the one kid went up to Coach, either Skip or Dunk, I don't know, and said, I really can't. I don't think I can play. And Skip, what? You were fine? He said, when'd you get hurt? He said, well, I don't know. I just don't think I can play. And what happened was, all the way there, it dawned on him he was going to have to line up across from Alt. And that'd make you sick. And he was sick. So from then on, we had a term. A kid that maybe really didn't want to play, we'd say he had Alt-itis.
Yeah, we invented a disease.
I know one time we were up at OG playing, and we got a kid that got a concussion, and it happens. I think in 30 years I've seen 2 or 3, but Aaron Silvers got dinged pretty good, and his mother was, she's a nurse, and she came down on the field, and she handled it very well. She said, just watch him. He can ride back on the bus with you. Just, have somebody with him to make sure he's okay, and we'll pick him up when he gets back home. So, you have things like that. But again, back in one of our reserve games, and this was against OG also, we had this young kid, Bert Goins Jr., and he got dinged pretty good in the game. And so again, we're watching him close, and we're on the bus coming back, and Dunk's making sure he's got him sitting right beside him, and the kid's saying something about, will you go to the prom with me, or what was his?
He was worried that he finally asked his girlfriend, or the girl he was enamored with, to the prom. Well, did I ask her to the prom? Did I kiss her goodnight? Did I have a good time? And he said that 1,000,000 times, and fairly loud, and all you could do is kind of pat him on the back and make sure he was okay a little bit. Well, he's right behind Coach Freewalt that's driving the bus, and Walt would turn around and look at me and say, "Can you shut him up?" so he was driving the bus driver crazy, and we had it all handled. His parents were waiting on us, and it was just a concussion, got cleared by his family doctor and played 2 or 3 days later. But he was really worried. And the amazing thing was, he eventually did take this young lady to the dance. I think it was homecoming. I don't know if he kissed her goodnight, but she became Mrs. So he married the young lady.
We like to hear a happy ending to that story. So you talked a little bit about Smith. For my entire life, it seems like it's been Ken Schreiner up there. What other coaches do you remember from OG, and what kind of coaching staff and philosophies have you seen come through OG?
Well, there was Louis Stokes, who was a really good guy, and the story behind that was his dad was a football coach too, high school football coach. And at one point, he and Skip coached in neighboring schools or something of that sort. But Skip and Mary, for a time, was Louis' babysitter. So he got to coach against the guy that used to babysit for him. And of course, we played that for all it was worth. And he was going to have to sit in the corner, and he's going to get grounded, and that sort of thing. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, I remember Louis, and I didn't recall the complete connection, but pre-game we were at the middle of the field and we were talking about kids, and he said, "Well, I have one kid that's really tough, a kid named M." And so we said, "Oh, okay," and we kind of knew that he was, and so the game, and they were ahead of us, and so we were marching down the field, and we had checked it out. It looked like the throwback pass to the quarterback was there. And so, I mean, we're in desperation. If this hits, we win. If this doesn't, we lose. And so we had it all set up and scouted out a play, and set it up a play or two before. And so we threw the quarterback, and out of nowhere, guess who comes and intercepts the ball? M. And we lost.
Well, Louis, and he was, again, a very competitive coach there. And I remember one time we went to a coaching clinic, and it was up at Bucyrus or something pretty far away. And I said, "Well, hey, Skip, that's a good drive. I can fly. We'll just jump in our plane, go up there." And I think Denny went along. I don't know who all was in our plane, and we flew up there, and Skip got a hold of Louis, and Louis come out and picked us up and took us to the clinic and brought it in. When we went to go, he says, "Damn, you got your own plane." He says, "You beat me, and I have to be your chauffeur to boot."
I was asked to ask you one question, then we're going to touch on something else that Coach Duncan and I talked to prior. Greg Walters, I think 1995, he shares higher than that, 91. First play of the game against the OG Titans. Very first play, threw a waggle pass for a touchdown. First of all, that doesn't happen very often, and on the first play of the game, a waggle pass for a touchdown. Do you recall?
I vaguely recalled. Of course, Greg was one of my big tight ends, and had a lot of talent and stuff. And so we knew that people would see the fake sweep and come roaring up on that. And Greg was quick enough that he could get behind him. And so I think 2 or 3 times through the Skip years, I think we opened with the waggle. Several times. I remember a Mike Hensley against Van Wert. We hit him on a waggle pass for a touchdown, and so yeah, we probably we could have done it more often, but then you get in my connotation lazy linemen. They expect you to hit the home run, and they're not willing to pound out the 3 or 4 yards, and so I dread all the teams that just pass all the time because I see their linemen just standing up, blobbing around, and I talked to my son that coaches down in Anna, and he coaches just 7th grade, and I told him, I said, "Well, if your linemen were sophomores, I would probably stop the bus when we got back, walk over to the field and put them on the 7-man sled and get back 3 steps and do takeoff drill." I said, because they spent a lot of time just airing out the ball. So yeah, we could do that. We practiced passing as much as we practiced running. We really did, honest to God. But in dire situations, we used it. And sometimes in surprise situations we use
Absolutely. We talked a few weeks ago was team preparation prior to the game, maybe the days or the evenings leading up to. That might have been a Thursday night prior to OG where we gathered the team in. We showed film footage. Do you recall any of that?
I think it was OG. It may not have been, but this was something. all of the coaches on Coach Bachman's staff either played for him or against him. And so when we got word that he was, of course, it was easy to get a clip of film on Coach Freewalt, easy to get a clip on Coach Fossler. He had the whole bank. It was easy to get a clip on me because I was at Van Wert. It was easy to get a clip on Bob because he was at Shawnee. Probably a little harder to get a clip on Denny at Cary, but Skip knew everybody in the world. So if you played at Timbuktu, he could get a clip of film on you. So he was going to show these clips of films to the kid as entertainment, which he did. And of course, the kids were on it because, after 5 or 10 years, you look I was god awful anyhow, but you look god awful out there, and the kids were laying on the floor just going crazy. And so then Skip said, okay, turn on the lights, and now we'll have our pizza. Except Coach Freewalt had gotten wind of that, and so he and I went up to Ohio Northern and got some Skip films of the 1950s. And so, Coach Freewalt said, well, wait, here's a clip of film that hasn't been shown yet. And so Skip gets big-eyed and looks at us. And so we put it on, and there he is in the 1950s, sitting like this in his stance, no face mask and stuff. And then the kids did go real berserk. And Skip took it like a champion, although he said some words to Coach Freewalt and I. But it was great entertainment. And things like that, I mean, you have to relax the situation a little bit before you kind of motivate it. And Skip was one of the most powerful motivational speakers I've ever heard. There were times he was talking to the kids, and
You felt like playing.
yeah, I mean, I just had this conversation with my grandson about you're not only playing for yourself, you're playing for all the guys that used to play sitting in the stands that are dying to play. And I mean, so when you say you're not playing for yourself or your own team or your own, but everybody that is so jealous that they wish they could be there. And so when Skip would get us so fired up, we'd all slide over into the gym, maybe with a few little tears in our eyes and your heart beating, and that was the great thing. You just said, my God, if these kids can't play now, they're never going to play.
Sometimes you have to be a little bit loose and have some fun too. You can't be serious all the time. So in the coaching staff, we had the standings. Dave Burkholder, one of the 8th grade coaches, would put the official standings for the week, and it would be the varsity, the reserves, whether it would be the Vodings or the free dunks, or the 8th grade team or the freshman team. Well, in the band, and Harvey, the 8th grade might be 1-3, and Ying might be 6-0 at the freshman, but he would put the freshmen at the bottom, and he'd put them, he'd always have the varsity first, but then he'd have the 8th grade as second. That would just drive Ying nuts.
I guess that we'll just close it off with any final thoughts about any specific games, years for OG, and what you think about the current football team, St. Mary's, with OG coming here this weekend. Any final thoughts?
I think that St. Mary's, I think, has an advantage. I think they have a strong running game. I think they have to work on pass protection, obviously. But OG has had a real rough time. I don't know if they've got kids sick or injured. And so I think the advantage is to St. Mary's. But, like I said, OG always finds a way to play us tough. So they're always scary to me.
Now, I know Bo said before the game last week that a couple things he wanted to have done, and that was play a much more clean game, penalties, fumbles, and that sort of thing. And he pretty much did that. I think he only had a couple penalties and played a pretty good game. It was a fun game as a spectator until they lost, and then it wasn't as fun. But no, I think we're coming along. We're making progress.
Well, we'll go to this on the monitor here. I talked to Coach Duncan earlier about this. I remember as a sophomore, traveling up to OG, and we found ourselves down at halftime like 28-0. And so at that point in time, there wasn't enough room to put all the entire team into a locker room, so all the non-starters and sophomores sat out in the gym. And all of a sudden, the varsity players were in, and I don't know who it was, but it sounded like Skip. I mean, you could hear him in the gym. And he just didn't want to, it wasn't a friendly halftime chat, but he laid into some people. And I don't know if you remember that or not. I recollect a broken blackboard, a chalkboard, or something like that. Maybe I'm dreaming, but we came back in the second half. I don't think OG scored. We outscored them and eventually won the ball game. But the halftime talk was heard throughout the gymnasium. Do you recall?
No, I don't. Can I tell a real quick story? It has nothing to do with OG or even our present time. Quint Clark, when he was a sophomore, now that was a long time ago, but they had to dress under the old gym at the end of the old football field, and there wasn't room for about a dozen people to go in there. So at halftime, they'd go in and they would have a pep talk by the head coach and so on, and all the sophomores had to sit outside on that wall that surrounded there. And so they'd sit there, and it just happened that the town drunk, I don't know who he was, I probably never met him, but he would take it upon himself to give a pep talk to the sophomores. And he would flail his arms and shout and rave and tell them they really had to do a good job. And of course they all knew they weren't even going to get in the game, but they had to sit there and tolerate that pep talk.
I don't remember Skip breaking a blackboard either. Skip could, like I said, give tremendous motivational talks. I'll tell a little aspect that's off of that. Skip decided we needed to do something different for conditioning. And so he assigned 8 or 10 guys to Coach Long as a squad. And Coach Freewalt was there as a college helper, and 8 or 10 guys to him as a squad, and I had a squad, and Coach Sabeck had a squad, and blah, blah, blah. Well, we had to do the same stuff that the kids did. So we did a bear crawl 40 yards. We did karaoke 40 yards. We did backward run 40 yards. We did this and that. Well, the ending thing was wheelbarrow. And I remember it was David Liette's senior class, and I think that's Voss's. We did wheelbarrow at the end. And so we get down there, and David could just go like the wind. He was so strong. I had a heck of a time hanging on to his legs. And we got down there, and we turned around, and I had to go 40 yards back. And so he kept telling me, Coach, we're ahead, Coach, we're ahead, Coach, we're ahead. Well, I'm dying. And I get from about here to Joe, kind of from the end, and my arms were giving out, and I'm kind of going like this. And I said, David, get me across the line. Well, he had to take that with glee because, as a coach, he's going to dang near kill you. And so I remember getting my arms back and my chin up and boom, boom, boom. We went across the line, got out of one sprint for my squad. Well, after that, the kids all hooted and hollered, and off they went. And over in that corner of the field was Coach Sabeck down on one knee. Over in that corner was Coach Long down on one knee. Over in that corner was Coach Duncan down on one knee. All of us dying, just sucking air and all that kind of stuff. Well, at that night at the meeting, Skip said, well, kids love that. I think we should do that again. And we all looked at him and said, with what coaching staff?
Well, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Third and Long. We want to thank you folks for, again, coaches, for telling your story and what you've known about the OG Titans. And, of course, the OG Titans will be here at Grand Lake Health Systems Field this Friday night. And, of course, this show airs about 6:15 prior to kickoff on Friday night. So if you get an opportunity and you want to learn a little bit about the history of Rough Rider football and then from the coaching staff that was there to do all that stuff for you, tune in. We want to thank our sponsors again. Zach, any final thoughts?
No, just thankful again for coaches to join us every week, and hopefully we can keep it up and everybody tunes in Friday night, and hopefully Rough Riders get back on the winning track.
For our coaching staff, for Zach Ferrall, I'm Joe Hurlburt. Until next time, so long, everyone.
Thank you for watching Rider Nation Station's presentation of Third and Long, brought to you by these following fine sponsors: Buffalo Wild Wings, Miller's Funeral Home, Eagles Lodge 767, Rabel's Auto Service, Plus One Professionals, All Glaze Equipment Rental, Midway Trailers, American Legion Post 323, Albert Sporting Goods, Family Audiology, Speckman Automotive, Kogi Plumbing and Heating, Spees Chiropractic, Varsity Lanes, Minster Bank, VFW Post 9289, and Gwinneri Pizzeria. Thanks for watching another episode of Rider Nation Station. Help us help you by subscribing on YouTube or following us on Facebook.